My next guest is a UK union leader whose political hero is James Connolly. His sporting hero is Ray Houghton. In the past, he's been called by his critics a Fenian, a communist and an anarchist. But when you ask him, he calls himself just one thing, Irish. Here he is, taking no nonsense from every other person who's interviewed him.
Now, are you or are you not a Marxist? Because if you are a Marxist, then you're into revolution and into bringing down capitalism.
Richard, you do come up with the most remarkable twaddle sometimes. Is that the level your journalism's at these days?
I simply asked you if that was you.
Do you want to apologise for all that, Mick?
Well, I think Jonathan should apologise for talking nonsense. None of that is true.
What will picketing involve?
Well, you can see what picketing involves. I can't believe this line of questioning.
Please wish me luck as I welcome Mick Lynch.
Well, that's nice.
There you go.
That's nice.
Welcome to the show.
You've had a few problems on the show. I've come over to sort them out.
You've come to sort them out?
A few pay issues.
I mean, there's a few pay issues here at RTE, yes. It's.
I've been hearing about them back there.
I mean, how do you think we could sort that out, Mick?
Well, you need proper union organisation. Everybody on the show has been telling me this tonight, from the researchers to the camera crew to the chairman.
OK.
Got to be paid properly.
Everybody's got to be paid properly. If only we knew that a few months ago. It's...
Properly, not excessively.
OK. There we go. Tonight's a wee bit of a homecoming. You got some family in the audience, do you?
Out there, friends, enemies, maybe, I don't know. That's just the relative.
That is just the relative. So your dad was from Cork.
Cork City, yeah.
Your mum was from Crossmaglen.
Yeah. Two road bowling counties. The only two road bowling counties in Ireland.
That is very true.
You've no idea what road bowling is, do you?
I do. What it is you actually go to a country road that's got no white lines on it, and you got the ditches up here, and there's about half a dozen people, they stand behind it, and then they take, it's like a ball bearing, and they roll that down, and if it doesn't hit the ditch or go into a cow pat, they pick it up again, and they throw it again.
Yeah.
There you go. That's sport. That's sport in Armagh.
That's sport in Armagh, yeah.
I mean, and if you've watched Armagh Gaelic football team play, you'll know why that's the main sport in Armagh.
Indeed. And Cork now.
And Cork. So they moved over to London when?
41, I think. They were teenagers. My mum was 15, 16, to domestic service. People in Ireland wouldn't believe that these days, that to go to domestic service in London during the war was a better life than living in rural Ireland. But that's... All of them went. We only had two people that stayed. One stayed in Cork City, one stayed in Crossmaglen, Creve Kieran, Townland, and everybody else had to go.
And that meant that you grew up in County Kilburn?
County Kilburn, Paddington, West London, yeah, all of that, all the clichés.
And what was that like, growing up in the 60s and 70s? I mean, being Irish over there at that time wouldn't exactly have been a good news story.
Yeah, I think I was a bit immune to it. I was a bit young and daft. I think most people would have experienced some... the Irish jokes were a permanent feature of people in your profession. Every time you put on the comedians, I don't know if you remember that.
I remember
a stream of Irish jokes, a stream of racist jokes, which have all gone now, thankfully. But we had a good community. We were glad to get the opportunities that we had in England. England has been good to a lot of Irish people. I'm not one of these people that says, oh, the English this and the English that. They have accommodated a lot of change, a lot of multiculturalism. There's been a lot of problems, but the English people are tolerant people, and I think they should be congratulated on that sometimes.
Yeah, something that a lot of people forget sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and it's easy to denigrate them, but they do put up with a lot, and they've carried on.
So your dad was a shop steward?
He was.
There was a lot of debate in the house. It was a busy house. You'd have been talking all sorts of politics.
Yeah, my dad was a shop steward in a factory, and he left that because it was getting too heavy. Then he went to the post office because he'd never been on strike. As soon as he came out of his time, his probation, we went on strike for 9 weeks. So my mum wasn't very pleased about that, but it settled down. And, yeah, it was a very vibrant house, 5 kids, a lot of views. There was a lot going on, a lot on the news. The Vietnam War was on, the hippie culture, all of the change. When I was a youngster, we had the punk rock explosion, and my mum from Crossmaglen was sitting there going, what's going on in this house? The oldest one's a hippie, the youngest one's tearaway punks and all that, and, you know, she was seeing all that as a person from rural Ireland living in the centre of London. So it was an interesting time, but you had to stand up for yourself. Otherwise, somebody would take your dinner and run down your argument. So if you wanted to keep your dinner, you had to eat it quick and then get on with the argument.
So did you learn more about life at home? Did you learn more about life in school or the pubs of Kilburn?
Well, I was good arguer in pubs, and some of my friends here tonight will know that. You get a good training, but you get a good training for the union movement. You have to stand your ground, go to branch meetings, get up and speak, put your argument over, learn some stuff. So it's all good training. I mean, I haven't had any formal training in public speaking or doing any of this stuff. You just put your arguments, get on with it, tell the truth and shame the devil.
It's not a bad way of operating, to be fair. I'm assuming, you know, growing up, going to school in England, there wouldn't have been a lot of Irish history taught. So where did the James Connolly connection come from?
Well, there was a lot of history in our house. There was a fair bit. We all went to Catholic schools and learnt a bit, but they didn't. It wasn't on the curriculum. But being where my parents were from and their background and their involvement in some ways, my dad's involvement in politics and all the rest of it, it was very vibrant. And my sister was very heavily involved in politics. All of us have got a view, and if you've met people from South Armagh, which I'm sure you have,
I have,
and people from Cork City, that is there'll be a lot of arguments and a lot of opinions coming forth. So you have to stand your ground and learn the way. So
Connolly as a political hero, then, was that sort of before your time in the union, or?
Connolly is a person that I've admired since I was 11 or 12. I'm really interested in his life. Obviously, he came to Ireland from Britain, from Scotland, and his life as a union organiser over here in the north of Ireland, up in Belfast, trying to get textile workers and dockers active, trying to bring the communities together. Then going off to America, he had a long sojourn in America trying to organise workers there, and then back for the uprising in 1916 and trying to get socialism moving in Ireland at that time, which was a big obstacle. There weren't many people that were with him, but his message has come across, and it still leads us, I think. Some of his principles should lead the Irish trade union movement and the Irish socialist movement. And he's a hero of mine, along with Jim Larkin, and they're remarkable people because they didn't come from Ireland, but they led the Irish Labour movement. So good on them, I say.
You know, when you look at, you're talking about that movement back then, you're looking at workers' rights now. Do you think things are getting better or worse?
Well, rights in Britain are being suppressed. We've got more anti-union laws. We've got issues that we've got a government that I think is rabidly right-wing, militantly right-wing. And the unions have got to stand up. They've got to reach out to the whole working class in towns and villages and cities in every workplace. And that's true in Ireland, it's true in Europe, it's true across the world. I see in America now the auto workers are getting going under another fella called Sean. I don't know if that's the common denominator, but they're rising up. Working people cannot accept their continued impoverishment. And in Britain, this show would be filmed with casualised labour, non-union labour, with people on less money than their predecessors were on. So we've got to make sure that we stand up for our terms and conditions. We've got to make sure that we're not all casualised going forward and that we can have secure employment and a secure society. That means solving the housing problems, which I'm sure people over here can recognise, solving the inequalities in society and making sure every worker gets a square deal off their employer. That's what we're about and that's what we're going to achieve. So unions have got to be strong, take action when it's necessary and negotiate good deals on behalf of our people. So
here in Ireland, we've got, you know, labour courts where you can go and you can solve a dispute. Do you think if you were on strike here in Ireland that would already be solved?
Well, there might have been a settlement tried to be put in. I'm not sure that people are that happy with labour courts in Ireland, and they're not happy with the fact that they don't get statutory recognition. It's very hard to get a recognised trade union in many Irish workplaces, especially the newer places, and I know the Irish unions will be campaigning on that. There are a lot of problems, but it comes through recruiting thousands of people into the union, getting those people into organisation and then taking the action that's necessary to deliver results. And people shouldn't apologise or be humbled about being trade unionists. There's a proud history in this country of founding the state through trade unions. They were at the core of founding the Irish state and they should be honoured for that role, and we should have a modern trade union movement in Ireland and Britain that delivers for people, and we've got to do that job and not be ashamed of it. It's not a bad history, it's a great history, and it's brought us many of our freedoms.
So whenever you're going on strike, I think you're going on strike again, is it?
Yeah. Next week.
Next
Yeah.
week. Obviously for the rights of workers in your union, and then there's other workers that are maybe trying to go and do their jobs and they're being disrupted. Where's the trade-off with all of that?
Well, it's a sacrifice. Our members lose their wages, obviously, when you're on strike. It is inconvenient for people, and we don't want that to happen. But we've had a surprising level of support. The Tories thought that we'd be out of this game within 2 weeks, that everyone would hate us. But what's actually happened has been a spark and a resurrection of trade union activity. So you've had things like the Royal College of Nurses has been on strike, led by a woman from Tyrone, coincidentally. For the first time in 100 years, we've got the consultants and the junior doctors out. There's a whole wave of strike action taking place in Britain. That's because they've suppressed the spring so long, it's got to come up again. People cannot put up with the casualisation, the lowering of wages and the ability to make ends meet. And we need unions to organise all workers to make sure we all get the deal that we're looking for.
So in the UK, you're a Labour voter, I'm assuming.
I vote Labour, yeah.
If you were living here, who do you think you'd be voting for?
Well, that's a trick question, isn't it? I don't understand proportional representation. We don't have it. What I would say, any politician that wants working-class votes has got to deliver a working-class agenda. That means fair wages, solve the housing crisis, deal with inequalities. And if you want to appeal to Irish workers, you've got to go into that election campaign delivering a workers' agenda.
OK.
So they're all going to do that now.
We all remember where we were when Mick Lynch threw his hat into the ring for the Irish presidential election. Before we let you go, we've got to talk a bit about football. Do you still watch Ireland when you can?
Yeah, I was in Greece this summer. We got beat again. Nearly got killed at the turnstile. If anyone was at that game, they'll remember that. It was terrible. Terrible result. We've had a series of them. Oh, there we go. That's outside the arena in Athens.
That's you and your son?
My son, James, he's towering over me. He's a railwayman as well. He's a good lad. He loves the Ireland team. He's got that from me, and we support them in whatever they do. I think we'll have to get more behind the rugby the way it's going at the minute. But there you go.
So we mentioned James Connolly, the other hero that I talked about in the intro, Ray Houghton. You were behind the goals in Stuttgart.
I was behind the goal in Stuttgart, 88. In those days, there used to be more London Irish people following the Irish soccer team, as we say, than people from over here. And all you could hear from the New Ireland fans was, kick it, kick it. And it'd be, kick him. I think they thought they were watching the wrong game. And the team, of course, was based out of London and Glasgow at that time. But it's been great. Watching Ireland is one of the best experiences, especially going away, as we've seen in Paris last week. It's a great experience, and I'd recommend it to anyone. Great friendships and great crack, of course.
You're in for the weekend?
In for the weekend. Hopefully see a few people tomorrow, have a bit of lunch with some people. A good friend of mine from the Union who's come back living in Kildare, Frank and Claire Call, will be having lunch in Dublin. If anyone wants to see me, you can buy me a pint of something and shake my hand and I'll slap you on the back.
There you go. Folks, absolutely delighted to have you here. Give it up one more time for Mick Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.